Do, 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 do. Mm. Good morning, USA, and the rest of the world. I know that those of you watching Rama Screen Channel, it's not, you guys don't just live in the USA. There's a lot of you also live abroad. Thank you for tuning in. I tried to do that really eloquently, but I can't. Robin Williams can do that the best, when that movie Good Morning Vietnam. Good morning, Vietnam. He projected from the diaphragm. Anyway, right now is Friday. Let's see. This I was gonna say December. January 3rd. Friday, January 3rd, 2020. Holy crap. The third day of the new year. And I woke up this morning. I was like, oh my god, I gotta watch the latest episode of The Mandalorian. For the past 8 weeks, we had gotten used to waking up every Friday morning to Mandalorian new episode. Um, so now that season one was done and over with, kind of feels weird, not having a new episode of Mandalorian this Friday, this morning. But luckily, last night there was the new second episode of Dracula. And so I'm here to talk to you about that. Again, I repeat some context here. This is the Dracula limited series that will be on Netflix starting this Saturday. I know a lot of you guys have asked me about that. Hey, are you Rama, that review that you did yesterday, was that for the one on Netflix? Yes. It's not that I got the screeners early, but again, keep in mind, this limited series is a co-production of BBC, specifically BBC One, and Netflix. So BBC gets to air it first. BBC aired the first episode on Wednesday night, the New Year's Day, and then last night the second episode, and then today is the final, the third episode. And you know what? I love this show so much. I hope this is not the only, the only. I hope there's more. That's what I'm saying. I hope, because it's like I said many times yesterday in my review of the first episode. It's a lot like Sherlock. It's not only created by Sherlock creators, Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, but the format and the style of 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 some of the sequences too reminds you a lot of Sherlock series. And so I hope that this would be like a thing, like maybe every other 2-3 years, Claes Bang could come back and reprise the role again, because he is fantastic. I mean, he stepped in the shoes previously worn by such greats as Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee, and Claes Bang made it his own. You know what I'm saying? This guy was made for this role. I mean, you should see him, man. If you've seen the first two episodes, you know what I'm talking about. All right. Okay. So let's get right to it. Heads up, this review contains spoilers. Spoiler alert. Just like many of the TV reviews I did about TV shows that have already aired, there will be spoilers, because there's no need for me to walk around eggshells or keep things in secrecy anymore, because the episode's already aired. It's already out there in the ether, in the universe, for you guys to watch. So this review is mainly for those of you, my fellow fans of Dracula, who have also watched last night's episode. Okay, let's get right to it so I can get straight to work after. I have a few notes here. Okay. I mentioned yesterday that it was so fascinating. The format is very Sherlock-esque. And for much of the episode one, what was happening, it was, part of that storyline, in addition to the backflash or flashback, I should say, backflash, flashback. is what happened presently, and that is Agatha Van Helsing interrogating Jonathan Harker. And the episode ends with Dracula pretty much burst out of Jonathan Harker's body, because apparently that is the new power of Dracula, in that he can disguise himself or inhabit somebody else's body. Um, Now, in this second episode, it's not so much an interrogation as it is psychoanalysis. There you go. What happens in the beginning parts of this episode? Well, there are two things. All right, the first thing that happens is Agatha and Count Dracula, playing chess, and Dracula is telling Agatha a story of him being on a vessel or a ship uh, on the way to England. So during this chess playing session, if you will, excuse me, Agatha keeps psychoanalyzing Dracula. I he and throughout the whole thing, I was watching that and I was thinking, like, do I like this? I mean, because you and I, fans of horror monsters or Dracula specifically, have always known the character Van Helsing to be somebody who the Van Helsing, the previous iterations of Van Helsing, at least that we've seen in movies, and including the one that Hugh Jackman played, has always been the kind of person that is pretty much sure or certain about what monsters he needs to kill. I mentioned yesterday, this Agatha Van Helsing is more or less kind of like in her formative years. Formative as in, like, she's still figuring out Dracula's powers. She's still learning ways to kill Dracula. And including this episode 2, she's like now psychoanalyzing him, like, instead of like charging or attacking Dracula already, like, she's like, oh, you can do that, Dracula? Ooh, you must be addicted to blood. But you didn't kill that one person, huh? I wonder why. I was like, I don't know if the previous iterations of Van Helsing that we've seen in the past, I don't know if they would have a conversation with Dracula. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they would be like, screw this talk. I'm gonna attack you right now. Um, so it's fascinating, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm too crazy about this version of Van Helsing. But I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys like the whole mind game thing that they had going on last night. Between them, it's like the chess game between devil and an angel, sort of thing. Um, Maybe you guys like that, but I don't know. I'm not too 100% in that yet, or on that camp yet. Um, okay, there's a couple of just side notes, a couple of memorable moments. I love the characters that were on that ship or vessel, if you will. There's each of them was so unique and eccentric. Like, there's the doctor with her deaf daughter. There's this married couple, and apparently the guy is actually a lover of the other guy who everybody perceives to be like the help. And then, of course, there's Count Dracula. He's one of the passengers. And and the Duchess, the old lady Duchess. It's just the last night's episode was like Murder on the Orient Express. It was like Knives Out. Have you seen Knives Out, the one that is playing in theaters right now? It's a both Murder on the Orient Express and Knives Out are who done it, right? It's a who done it mystery. That's what happened last night because Count Dracula is so addicted to blood. He couldn't help himself. He just had to like feed like that whole sail ship from Transylvania to London. I suspect that's the route. I mean, he could have just, I don't know, maybe stored up a vial of or a gallon of blood from Transylvania and put it in his coffin so he wouldn't have to kill anybody on board that ship. You know what I'm saying? Or he could have just slept all the way through in the coffin. Like, I don't know how many hours anyway. A ship's, a ship sail from Transylvania to London. Like, or maybe a couple of days. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, but he couldn't help himself. He could not help himself. He's like, he just craves for blood, like I crave for sushi, or I crave for In and Out. I just have to have them every other day or every lunch. So, um, a big part of what happened last night was that he killed a few people, and it started out, it sparked that whole who done it mystery. Like, oh my god, it's one of us on board is the murderer. It's like dun dun dun. But it's the bodies, for the most part, were never found, so it's more like a missing person case instead of a murder. But there's no detective Hercule, Poirot Hercule, on board. Hercule, yeah. So that was pretty much the essence of last night's episode, and that's very typical of Mark Gatiss and Steve Moffat, right? If you've seen Sherlock series, previous seasons in the past, the first episode jumpstarts what is supposed to be the overarching arc in that season. But in the second episode, most of the time, or usually, it would veer off. It would take a detour to some other storyline before, at the end of that second episode, it steers back to how they're going to conclude with the third episode. So last night is the same ordeal, is the same format. Again, that's why I said it's very Sherlock-esque. I said that millions of times, and I'll say it again because it's a Moffatized Dracula. Um, let's get to the spoiler, okay? Because one of the things I was thinking also when I was watching it last night, I was like, why didn't Mark Gatiss and Steve Moffat set this Dracula limited series in modern day, on present day, just like Sherlock? Why does this one have to be period piece, Victorian? Like, why? They could have add another unique take or unique spin on Dracula by setting it in our world, in our modern day world, right? I mean, they've already done some things here and there to make this Dracula their own, with or by adding Dracula's new skills or new powers, bursting out of the wolf, bursting out of somebody's body, and um, stuff like that. But I was like, they could have set this in a modern day. Like, why does it have to be period piece? And I was like thinking, well, maybe it does add to the whole goth, the whole, because back then in the 1800s, people were still more accepting of lores like or myth or legends like Dracula's. They were more accepting of superstitions, as you say. So, like, I get it. I guess that's why, because people were more naive back then. The knowledge or the science was not advanced yet. But as I was thinking all that, voila, guess what happened? the reveal, the twist at the end. They brought Dracula, bam, into our world, into the modern day, with apparently Van Helsing, modern day Van Helsing, Agatha Van Helsing. So that kind of gives me more questions like, okay, and maybe you can help me on this. Maybe you have the answers, or maybe you have the theories. So by the end of tonight's episode, or last night's episode, Dracula, because the ship blow up, right? And Dracula, to save himself, he got into his coffin, and so he slept in his coffin, and then he burst out. He kicked the coffin out, and then he swam to the surface, and then voila! Once he got to the beach, it's modern day world. The cops swarmed on him. Modern day Agatha Van Helsing was like, "Hey, what took you so long?" So that's what happened, right? So my question to you is, why did Count Dracula, sleep that long for hundreds of years? Like, why didn't he get out of that coffin that same night that the ship sank? Like, what caused it? Like, was there something in that explosions? Maybe he got knocked out by the explosion, or something in the coffin that made him, that kept him sleeping that whole time, that did not allow him to wake up. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That'll be. I'm sure the episode 3 will answer that. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they won't. But do you have a theory? Do you guys have a theory as to that? And then also, Agatha Van Helsing, she looks the same. Now, my speculation is that, okay, number one, either Agatha Van Helsing, the one that supposedly drowned that night when the ship exploded, because she was on kind of her way, or in the process of turning. Remember, just like Jonathan Harker was turning in episode 1, Jonathan Harker, when he was interrogated, he kept like, um, pretty much, his nails were done and over with. He was peeling his nails off. So that's exactly what Agatha Van Helsing did on the ship before it sank. She kept peeling her nails out, like, oh, and she kept telling the captain, like, oh, I'm dying, because Dracula, turned out he was kind of savoring um, Agatha Van Helsing instead of fully killing her. So it's like, I'm dying, I'm dying. So maybe she was in the process of turning into a vampire. So maybe, one theory is that the modern day Agatha Van Helsing, the reason why she looks the same, and hence being played by the same actress, is because that's the same Agatha Van Helsing from a couple of 100 years ago. um, so that's one theory. The second theory, or my speculation, is that, um, maybe she is one of the descendants of Van Helsing. Van Helsing supposedly is this lineage of monster hunters, right? Kind of like, I'm thinking about that sci-fi series Van Helsing. She is supposedly also part of the lineage of Abraham Van Helsing. So if you are a descendant, or if you, it's what I'm trying to say is that, like, the business runs in the family. You can't escape it. So if your name is Van Helsing, more than likely you will become a monster hunter, whether or not you want it. Maybe you want to be a singer or painter. No, you gotta hunt monsters, because that's your destiny. So she could be the one that shows up on the beach, could be a descendant of Van Helsing, or Agatha Van Helsing. That's my speculation, but it's fascinating. I love it. Just when I was like thinking, like, why couldn't they set this story in the modern day? Boom. They're like, oh, Rama, you want it set in the modern day? Here you go. Here you go. Request granted. um, Before I'm done, I just want to also point out last night episode, the writing, there's a lot of cheesy one-liners. I was like, oh. It's not that they're annoying, but they were at the level of. Do you remember Pierce Brosnan's James Bond movies? You know, Tomorrow Never Dies, uh, Die Another Day, Goldeneye, right? Um, The World Is Not Enough. Do you remember Pierce Brosnan's James Bond movies were littered with cheesy one-liners. I mean, James Bond in his entire history has always been filled with, he has always uttered one-liners here and there, especially Roger Moore. Um, Much less so with Daniel Craig because they're trying to ground Daniel Craig to sort of reality, gritty world sort of thing. But Pierce Brosnan's James Bond, man, he kept saying one cheesy one-liners after the next. And so last night it reminds me of that. I was like, what is going on? Why am I watching something akin to Pierce Brosnan's James Bond? So here's one mildly funny one. There's a scene, I think, when they're figuring out who among us is the murderer. Um, and I think by this point, the scientist has already died. And one of the other characters, I think, asks, no, I'm sorry. The scientist is still alive at this point. There you go. So the scientist himself asks Dracula in this scene, have you always, or like, are you a scientist? Have you always wanted to be a scientist? Along that line, of course, I'm paraphrasing. And Count Dracula responded by saying, no, but I've always had an appetite for one. Come on. He's like, I have an appetite for one. Didn't. Another one also, when Count Dracula is playing chess with Agatha Van Helsing, and Agatha Van Helsing is like busy, doing her mind game, psychoanalyzing freaking Dracula. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get you figured out. Um, at one point, Dracula, no. Agatha asks Dracula, like, you feed on people, you eat people. What what are you thinking putting yourself in a situation surrounded by people? Why do you tempt yourself like that? You know you have cravings, you know you can't control yourself, you can't control your it's like your hunger. And then Dracula says back to her, I love people. What are you talking about? I love the company of people. But why? You kill them. You should I mean you hate people, right? You hate people. That's why you kill them. No, I love people. And he said, why do you pick flowers? I was like, oh snap. That's a pretty good comeback. Still kind of cheesy in the sense of a one-liner, but it's pretty good. Because you're like, it's true. Like, why do we have to kind of cut flowers or pick them, right? If we like flowers, if we think that flowers are so beautiful, they smell good, they're gorgeous, we walk by a garden of flowers, like if we love them so much, then we would not pick them, right? We would not kind of like cut the branch and like take it for ourselves. So that's Count Dracula's rationalization for killing people. It's like, I love people. That's why I gotta kill them. It's like picking flowers. We gotta pick them. So that's another thing. Another one liner. The other one also. I think. Uh Anyway, it'll come back to me. But last night was just so. It was littered with one liner after another. It's It was something. It was quite an experience listening to those. The writing was just like they were just like, oh, let's go off the wall with all these cheesy one-liners. Let's just take it where no man has gone before. Um, Paprika. That's also another line that comes up last night. Paprika. Well, it needs more paprika. Um, Last thing I want to talk a bit about the reproduction. I Now you can help me out here. Correct, not correct me if I'm wrong, but fill in the information because I don't know the reason why Dracula is so obsessed with reproducing, with continuing his lineage, with finding brides. In the episode one, there's that creepy baby. Remember that? And the people that he held up in the castle. And in this second episode, there's also a hint of that when he kills that one person's wife. He also mentions bride and continuing. Like, I don't understand that. I can't wrap my head around that. Like, Dracula lives forever, right? Dracula lives for eternity. Why does he need to have children or somebody to continue, his lineage? I don't get why that is part of this, or that aspect is part of this Dracula. Maybe you guys can help me with that question because it seems that, like, I don't get that. Dracula's, at least the previous iterations or versions of Dracula's in the past, they were content with just by themselves living eternally. Hey, Robert is here. Hey, good morning, brother. This video contains spoilers, by the way. Just heads up, Robert. It's about last night's Dracula's Palatine. It's about last night's episode. So if you haven't seen it, just a heads up. There's spoilers here. So I don't get that. I don't get the obsession. Maybe that's part of the storyline from Bram Stoker's novel. Maybe. I don't remember Gary Oldman's Dracula being obsessed with reproduction in the 1992 movie, Francis Ford Coppola movie. So I'm not sure where they're going with this aspect of Dracula. But I love the whole suspense that they had last night with the, oh yeah, we're gonna create this circle. Dracula can't come into the circle, and then they're like, oh, Pietro, because Dracula can disguise himself when somebody else in somebody else's body is like. So they suspect that Pietro might be one of them. I'm not one of them. Dracula in his body. There's a lot of tension last night, and I loved it. This show has been really good when it comes to its jump scares, when it comes to its practical effects, the makeups for specifically for Claes Bang when he turns into Dracula, the teeth, it's not your cheesy just like two fang kind of teeth, but it's like every one of them was like, and then of course he's bloodshot like red eyes. Oh, fantastic. Production quality wise, as far as TV movie goes or miniseries goes, this show is top notch. I love it. Um, Robert says I have to check it out. That's right. Check it out. The whole 3 episodes come out on Netflix this Saturday, brother. So you can watch it then. Right now, they're on BBC as single episodes. So I can go on and on and on praising the production value of this limited series. They go above and beyond in service of the story and in service of the great performances by Claes Bang, who plays Dracula. Fantastic, remarkable performance. And also Dolly Wells, who plays Agatha Van Helsing. Um, so I can't wait. I can't wait. Today is the finale. Today is the final episode, episode 3. I'm sad that it ends. Hopefully, this becomes a thing. Like every other year or maybe every other 3 years, we're going to get a new season of Dracula. That would be nice, right? The thing is, and I'll end with this. The thing is, I don't think that this Dracula created by Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, I don't think that this has caused as big a phenomenon as Sherlock did. Do you see what I'm getting at? Sherlock, when it came out, what was it, 2011, I think, right? It was a world phenomenon. Like it went like if it was a video on YouTube, it went viral. Like everybody loved Sherlock, and that's when people or the whole world started like, "Oh my God, who is this Benedict Cumberbatch?" And that's when Benedict Cumberbatch pretty much skyrocketed, right? Because Benedict Cumberbatch prior to Sherlock had done some gigs here and there, in Britain, right? He was not famous in America or any other parts of the world. But then Sherlock came, and then just like he shot the stardom, and everybody just loved. So every time there's a new season of Sherlock, it was a thing. It was like an event, right? It was like a big deal. I don't feel like that is, at least for this current season of Dracula. I don't feel like that is happening for Dracula. I don't feel like that the same phenomenon that happened to Sherlock is happening to Dracula. So if that is the case, then this might just be it. We might not have another season of Dracula. I read an article that says that, oh, Doctor Who and Dracula new episodes dropped on New Year's Day, and they were just lukewarm, or they were like, oh, BBC started out the New Year weak. Instead of strong, it's weak. So the critics are already saying that about Dracula and Doctor Who, the new episodes. So it's sad. It's sad because I want another new season of Dracula. Oh, Robert says, I love the 1979 Dracula and Coppola's Dracula. Right? Coppola's Dracula, Gary Oldman. Oh, so good. Um, so it's sad because Claes Bang is so good in this role. He's so delicious in this role. No pun intended. He was made for this role, and if only this show has been well received as Sherlock, because Claes Bang could be the next, Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee, where he continues to play Dracula in many versions or many seasons, and that will be what people will know him as, his legacy until he dies. And I don't think he would mind that at all. That's like a steady job. But right now, I don't see that buzz is happening for this Dracula, unfortunately. But hopefully, who knows? Maybe by the time all these 3 episodes drop for you to binge watch on Netflix starting Saturday, maybe that will catch on. Maybe then this Dracula will be a phenomenon. Maybe because the fact that it's freaking BBC, maybe people are like, oh, I don't know. Or maybe some people are turned off by the fact that it's horror. But when they check it out on Netflix, because Netflix is like streaming global thing, maybe you guys will be able to help this Dracula become more popular and gain the popularity that it deserves. And so we might get season 2, hopefully. So, but yeah, today's episode 3 will air later this evening on BBC. So I'll be back later this evening to give you my live review of that episode as well. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching this live review. If you've seen last night's episode as well, do you agree or disagree with my assessment? Do you have answers to all my questions in this video? If you do, please share your theories in the comment section below. And as always, subscribe to my channel, press that like button, ring that bell. And if you can help support me, please do so at patreon.com/ramascreen. That's patreon.com/ramascreen. All right, let's rock this, everybody.